Hey, we're coming to you from the vault in downtown Billings. This is episode 4. We have an awesome guest today. His name is Russ Palmer.
How's it going today?
And Russ, we're going to get into it with you here, but I'm excited to hear your story. You've got a pretty extensive background when it comes to like fitness and cycling, running. You like to put yourself through the suck.
Yeah, I have an extensive background in dealing with anxiety, is what the truth is.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate the vulnerability.
Okay, and excuse me. Really, I started to run when I was 11 years old, and my father and my stepmother had a very tumultuous relationship, and she had some issues, right?
Yeah.
And she wasn't very consistent. So one day I was at football practice in a little town called Whitehall, Montana. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm, 11 years old. It's when you just first start football back in the 70s. Right. And I come out, I get showered and I come out for my ride home, and she looked at me and said, "You took too long," and drove away.
Jeez.
And we lived a mile out of town, about 2 miles from the school. So it wasn't really all that far, but I started hoofing it home.
That was when you started.
And then I thought, if I just started running right now, how far could I run? And I ran all the way home. And I got home and she looked at me and she said, how did you get here so fast? And I said, I ran. To which she beat me with a spatula.
Oh my gosh, this is some real, honestly, I love it.
Yeah. So this is so when you look at endurance athletes and you go, man, they've got something going on. You're right, they do. They've got something going on.
There's a story.
Yeah. So I just started, it became a deal with me. I would hurry up and get done after football, and I would run home before she would get to the parking lot. And so it was a pretty passive aggressive way to deal with this kind of tumultuous relationship. And shortly thereafter, I left that and I went and I lived with my mom up in the Flathead Valley.
Yeah.
And I started running. And, as when you decide to do anything in your life, you notice that people come along and kind of help you along the way. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And you have God, motivation, and all of those things that kind of start happening to you. Universe, motivation, whatever your belief is. But that definitely started happening to me. And I went from kind of a kid who was pretty reserved and kind of picked on to really having a purpose and being known as a runner. Long story short, ran through high school and was okay. I was second best in our division and also ran in state. And
that's pretty cool.
But what was really important is as I went through struggles in my life, in my younger life, and some issues with addiction and this type of stuff, fortunately, running always stayed with me. Now, man, I'd get really high and go run for a long time and do those kinds of things. But when I was getting my hands and understanding this, that it all came back to, you have anxiety issues from a multitude of things. And of course you get therapy and all the stuff that comes in, all the stuff you guys are doing with WTO, which is just so wonderfully interesting to me because I've been through this.
Yeah.
So through my life, I've run marathons, half marathons, 5Ks, but mostly I just liked going out alone and just getting out and putting in the miles. Well, I am 61 now, coming up on 62 in November. And, running from 11, it just gets harder. So I discovered cycling through a friend of mine again.
Okay.
And as soon as I discovered this, I fell in love with it. Before I even had a proper road bike, I signed myself up for a 100-mile century ride. It's called a century ride, which is kind of a cycling equivalent to a marathon. And that's just been it ever since. So these passions came together with me to create events. And we can talk about that story a little bit if you'd like to, but since, I guess 9 years ago, I started the Montana Warrior Run, which is kind of come to fruition now. And now we're involved here with the Revenant with you guys. And man, I could not be more excited about what we've got going on with this.
That's awesome. And so Russ is the Revenant, I would say, race director.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean,
Sure.
we haven't really been doing titles or anything. We're just kind of doing the thing.
Complaint department is what it was.
Yeah, sure. Quality control.
Sure. Sure.
But tell us, I mean, what was the motivation to start the Montana Warrior Run? And then what is the motivation to now, help us with the Revenant? I mean, we're kind of helping you with it, and you're helping. It really was symbiotic how it all came to be.
Yeah, it really was, because I was going to take the summer off and not do anything.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. I wasn't going to do any. I mean, I would actually go participate in an event or something like that.
Right.
Which, who knows? We'll see how this goes. I might get a chance.
Sure.
But the rolling complaint department. How are you liking it? Anyway, I was working at this time. I was working for the Mercedes-Benz dealership here in town as a general manager, and I got a phone call from the Semper Fi Foundation. Think Wounded Warriors for Marines.
Yep.
And they asked if we had. They said they had a bunch of Marines that they were taking down to Sheridan for an outing weekend. Shooting, bowing, whatever they were going to do.
Yeah.
And if we had a van that we could donate for the weekend. And I said, I don't have a passenger van. We have some cargo vans. These are Marines. That should be fine. And the guy said, well, yeah, they're Marines with missing limbs and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that seemed funnier in my head than when it came out.
Yeah.
And I said, let me see what I can do. So I called the owner, a man named Steve Zabawa at the time. And I was sure this guy would say, yeah, man, sorry, no way. Without hesitation, he said, what do we have on the lot? And I said, well, we have some GL 450s, some GL 550s on the lot, which are the big SUV Mercedes-Benz, 7-passenger deals.
Yep.
And we had 2 of them black. He goes, give them those. I was like, really? Yeah, let's do it. And so I called the guy up and I said, would 2 7-passenger SUVs work for you? They're like, yeah, we'll make that work.
Yeah.
So we showed up downtown at the Watchtower here in downtown Billings, and these guys are there. And as advertised, you have men and women with various issues they're dealing with coming out of the service.
Sure.
Across the gamut. And they could not have been more excited to see 2 Mercedes roll up.
Yeah.
They were just like, oh. One guy goes, who's driving? And I just handed him the keys. And I said, I guess you. And I'm thinking in my head, we're about to give 2 $90,000 vehicles. And now 10 years ago, $90,000 was some money.
Yeah.
To a bunch of Marines. What could possibly go wrong with this? And I was just struck by how appreciative they were. There were just hugs and pictures, and when they got back, these vehicles were cleaner than when we gave them to them.
I bet they were.
And I mean, just like, I couldn't believe it. And a letter, and again, they all show up and think, and it, Gabe, I don't know how else to describe this other than I was just a bit embarrassed, because literally I jumped in 2 cars. Well, not myself, but
sure.
Took a couple cars down to the Watchtower that mind you, I didn't own. I just delivered them there.
Yep.
And said, here, you can use these. And I remember telling the guy with Semper Fi, I said, look, anybody would have done this. He said, well, actually, no, they wouldn't. We called every dealership in town. You were the last call.
Crazy. They probably had in their minds, Mercedes.
Too much. Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Probably not going to help us out.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. So at the time, I was doing a small run event for the March of Dimes, helping a friend out with it. And they were all about their march and their walk, and I get it. And they just determined that a 5K with that was more than they wanted to do, and they weren't that interested in doing it after a couple of years. So my marathon running always took place up on the rims outside of Billings, and it's kind of a cool little wild place in the middle of town, you know, with a lot of hills. And I loved it because it was just, you know, you could get a hard workout in there.
Sure.
And the city came in and put a trail in a few years ago, Swords Trail, and you know, if you were to just kind of do a pretty simple loop, it was about 8.5 miles, and there was a lot of climb on that, the way we kind of laid it out.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, I've always wanted to do something up here. I think this is going to be it. And I'm standing up there on Yellowstone Kelly's grave, looking out over the city and the valley and the Beartooths in the back. You know, it's just really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was just like, honor through sweat. And I was thinking about all the things that we've talked about. You know, people in this community have given so much, and then they come back, and it's just hard. You know, I mean, it's hard in a lot of different ways.
Right.
And you know, kind of everybody gets talked about the wounded warriors, those who have suffered really greatly, of course, but you know, just coming back in and getting into a life that is not a military government controlled life is very, very different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's transition. So I wasn't really thinking about that then. I was just thinking, okay, I'm going to start a run and I'm going to give the money to somebody. I didn't even know who, but I was starting the run. So picked a date on the calendar and got a hold of a guy named George Blackard, who does a great deal of work in the community, in the veterans community here. And I said, you know, I've got this run and I'm going to do the run. I'm just looking for someone who wants the money. And he had just started an Andrew Pearson American Legion post. And that, you know, the run started. So we had a 5K run.
Yep.
And we had an 8.5 mile run. And the first year we had the run in August, because you know, I kind of had this idea that I wanted it to be a little challenging. It wasn't so long that, you know, everybody could do it if they wanted to. And we had the approach, I don't care if you walk it, we'll sit here till midnight if it takes you that long. And we had a couple gals
take their time, or just couldn't do it faster.
No, they took us up on, they were not in condition to run an 8.5 mile. And I was really concerned that they would be in condition to walk an 8.5 mile this course.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking some
steep
climbs where you got to hold a rope and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And those girls, you know what? With the right why, you will do anything. And I really didn't get the whole story, other than they had a nephew that was in military service and they were doing this for him.
Crazy.
And it was incredible. And that first event, it poured in August. It poured like the rain we've had here the last few days, you know, like an inch.
Yeah.
Poured rain. And I look back on that, it was still the best event. I mean, people absolutely loved it. We had a bunch of reservists come down and run. And I mean, if we would have told them they had to lay down and roll through a mud puddle, they would have done it. They were just digging it.
Yeah.
And Ryan Zinke came when he was running for Congress back then, and participated. And he's an old high school mate of mine. And so it was really a cool deal. And over the 9 years, you know, it did fairly well. And like so many events, COVID just got it off of people's minds, I think. Took it out of top of mind. And, you know, we went from 250 to less than 100 runners, you know.
Yeah.
So started to look at, all right, what's going on? My life had changed. I was more involved in cycling at this point.
Right.
And I've been interested in getting a gravel ride in Billings. They're big all over the country. And Billings is just kind of the place that people miss. And they miss it because they drive down the freeway and they see the 3 refineries and they think it's an industrial town. But, I've taken people out on the Yellowstone just floating from Duck Creek, down to the bridges on the interstate. And they're like, I had no idea that the Yellowstone was this beautiful here.
It's
And
so beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then when we started talking about course options and we picked, kind of the South Hills. And as you drop down over that and you see just the Pryor Mountains out there that are absolutely sacred mountains in this part.
They are. Yeah.
And the landscape and how it's formed here is unbelievable. I mean, it's a 70 million year old landscape here that was a beach.
Yeah.
Right. It was a beach. And you come around, so you get the Pryors, you get the Beartooths, and I just thought, this is it. This is what we're gonna do. And we started talking at that time, and the synergy and the ideas just started to flow, and now we have the Revenant. And it's kind of started. It reminds me of that first year with the Warrior Run. Maybe people will show up, maybe they won't.
Time will surely tell.
Time will surely tell. I hope so. I can tell you this: the people that do show up will have a memorable day.
Yeah,
they'll have a very memorable day, and that's. I think you best affect change when people can attach themselves, their desires, their goals, and their drive to it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct correlation. But I found doing the Warrior Run, and particularly the ribbon programs and that kind of stuff that we had, that when people have a why, it's like these 2 ladies, it was such a lesson. When people have enough why, they will do amazing things, and pulling them off a course is the worst thing you could do for them.
That we are trying to connect the WTO mission, that why, to this event as completely as possible, right? Like, we want the DNA of WTO to be flowing through Revenant. And that's kind of a recent conversation we had. We had this set up as a run that was going to be this ultra marathon 30-mile gravel run, right?
Yeah.
And then a 40-mile bicycle ride or a 100-mile bicycle ride.
Gravel,
yeah. Mixed terrain.
Yeah.
Gravel just means any gravel's on the road, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a 85% gravel.
Yeah.
So it's a gravel ride.
And the views just are insane. You can see different, growing up, they just taught you the Rocky Mountains. Well, there's all these ranges within the Rocky Mountains.
There are.
And you can see probably 5 different ranges that are anywhere from 30 miles to 80 miles away from the top of the course. But that said, WTO stands for, we want to be inclusive. We want to be accessible to veterans and their families, right? Yeah. We want to take care of people at a 5-star level and with unconditional love and infinite love. And when you are starting something new, like a run, you tend to just kind of pull from things that you're used to, right?
Yes.
But I think we all got outside of our heads in our planning meeting the other day.
We did.
And that started with Russ, because he came to us and said, you guys, we need to make it free.
I did.
Tell us more.
Well, I wish I could remember the clip I was watching and give credit to the podcaster, because he was fantastic. But a cycling influencer, podcaster, professional cyclist was talking about a ride in Nevada, and I can't even remember the name of it, L something. And but it started 2 years ago, and this guy was just trying to raise some money for the volunteer fire department. And so he puts up this gravel ride and says, come and ride, tell your friends to come and ride, and it's free. So, not knowing a lot, he just started talking to people who rode gravel bikes. Well, interestingly enough, they know people who know people and know people. Race day shows up, and here this guy is faced with some of the top gravel racers not only in
the
the United States, but in Europe, who are over here
That's
training,
crazy.
decided they're just going to come and blaze this 125-mile ride for this with this guy. And, you know, I don't know what they threw in. He doesn't even talk about that. I don't know, $20, $50,
Like donations accepted, but
whatever,
who
donations
knows?
accepted. Well, now this place has turned into, you know, a ride that people put on the calendar. And there is no reason in the world that this can't be that way. I think where our head is we've got a big mission here, you know, that we're
With
trying
WTO.
to with WTO. And the Warrior Run is just a small engine, or I'm sorry, not the Warrior Run, the
Well,
Revenant.
it had been an engine to raise money in the past.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of just where our heads
yeah,
were at. Like, dude, we'd be honored if you did that for us.
Yeah.
It's kind of like where it
yeah,
started.
yeah. And this is, you know, when I was doing the Warrior Run, I was just about to run. That's what I did. Okay. And how much money can I raise? And, you know, what are the numbers and how do we do this? And, man, if I didn't write a big enough check to the guys at the end, I was kind of disappointed. So, but as I've been more involved in understanding what your organization is about and kind of the goals that go way beyond what I was involved with before, I just thought, man, I watched this video and I'm like, why are we worrying about how much money that we gain right now? What we need more than money is exposure. And, you know, kind of in my life, I've just, particularly as I've gotten older, I am less hung up about money. You know, in my life, God has taken care of me very well. I've been very blessed, way beyond what I deserve. And so, you know, I mean, it's just kind of one of those moments where God, the voice in my head, whatever, just said, stop worrying about the money. As a matter of fact, we're taking the money off the table. Send Gabe a text. Tell him tell him that the Revenant should be free.
Yeah.
He did not reply right away going, Russ, this was a brilliant idea.
I didn't say it was a bad idea either.
No, he said nothing. Okay. He said nothing for 4 days. Nothing. Nothing.
I like to process and have my own conversations with God about things. And you know, I think for Warrior Transition Outdoors, like Gavin and I, we'll walk into meetings with people who have millions of dollars in their bank account.
Yeah.
And we'll just say, tell us your story. And at the end, they'll say, well, what do you want? We'll say nothing. Because that's how we are. We don't care. We want people to follow their hearts. Like if it's on someone's heart to give us money, but guess what? If God doesn't want your dollar in my pocket, I don't want your dollar in my pocket. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
The other aspect to the price specific thing, so episode 3, just before you, we had Tabitha Bonner's her name. And she leads a Centennial run or a Centennial Trails nonprofit up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Beautiful area.
And runs the Coeur d'Alene Marathon as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a fundraiser for that nonprofit. But the thing that in that conversation, we're talking about trails and that they're free, they're accessible, they're beautiful, and it gets people back to like everything we stand for WTO, which is like connecting with nature, right? And so I think that's another aspect of this, to remove that barrier from people to say, like, come be a part of our mission. Sure, even when you said exposure, that is great. And I'm thinking, like, I just want people to, part of the reason for exposure is so they know the mission.
Right.
Right. And even if they never do anything with us, whether it's donate, volunteer, it's not about that. If they care for veterans and a veteran and their family that much more because they got to be part of Revenant, like that's what we care about. Right. We want impact. We don't need money. Money will come. I'm not worried about that.
You never know. I refer to these connections as social neurons. And it's interesting how, regardless of what you're going to do in your life, whether you're going to run a marathon, whether you're going to start a business, whether you're whatever it is, good or bad or challenge or whatever, you're going to bring into your sphere people to connect with. So we've got a situation now where we're going to put up this event in this magnificent place. And we're going to show off a part of our community that most people just don't go see. and we're going to start making some connections. Uh, it's not up to me if there's 5 or 500. It just isn't.
Yep.
Okay. It's up to me to set up feed stations every 20 miles, 5 miles on the run circuit, and every 20 miles on the cycling circuit. And then from there, it was just like, okay, we have a course, we have people. What are we going to do? What kind of experience can they have? And I think I can't remember if it was you or if it was Gavin who said, give them whatever experience they want. And oh man, did the lights go on.
So that's the next big development is we're not even calling it an ultra marathon or century ride.
Could be.
It could be.
Could be a 5K.
Could be a marathon. Could be a half marathon.
Could be a family walk to the end of the block and back.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
So
could be a kid's mile.
It could, yes, all of the things that we talked about, it can be all of those things. So when you sign up for the run, here's what you're going to do. You're going to set a goal for yourself. I'm going to ride my bike. I don't know. It might be, let's see how far I can go. I don't know. I'm just going to ride it until I can't ride anymore. Okay. All that we ask is that you bring your phone and
or watch or whatever you record things on.
Anything to record distance and time. That's all. Okay. It's not for us. There's this year, no podium, none of that. Okay. None of that. It's you and your time. So you decide, let's say that you're going to run, and the furthest you ever run is 10 miles. And you're looking at this and you go, well, I'm going to try for 30. You know what? I don't even know what that feels like. It could be terrible. And you get into it, and let's say you do 18 miles and that's it. You can't do it, but you feel like you've given your all. This is where you're at. Stop. If you're at an aid station, you just tell them I'm done. Okay. And we'll have support vehicles that are going to come around the course, and they'll pick you up and they'll take you back to the starting line. At the starting line, you're going to go to a tent and you're going to say, here's what I did today. I did 18 miles and I did it in this amount of time. At that point, they're going to print you a dog tag with your time and your distance. They're going to give that to you. You get a t-shirt. There are no finisher t-shirts. Yeah. They're all starter t-shirts. Okay. So if you pony up to the line and take 3 steps, you get a starter t-shirt. And as we started to talk about this idea, and on one half, but we're thinking, this is stinking ridiculous. What are we doing? And on the other hand, I think you said, yes, but it's what people who are transitioning in anything in their life go through. They just have to start.
Yeah.
And, you kind of have an idea in mind, but away you go. So it seemed so in alignment with, finally, in one meeting, the event and the organization came into perfect alignment.
I agree. Yeah. It felt like we were holding a run fundraiser, and now it feels like we have a run that is all about what we stand for.
Yes.
And you said to yourself, what I love is that it's actually not just like Gavin and I did, this is not our mission, it's everyone's mission. And we learned that quickly on, which is why we're national in 2 weeks and 60 plus staff members across the country, right? Like people are being drawn to WTO because of the mission. And I love that your story, I caught what you said earlier, which was the first time you ran, what did you say? I'm going to go as far as I can
go. Yeah.
Talk about full circle, man.
Yeah, for sure.
The first time you went to run that helped you fall in love with running, you just set out to, the goal was, I'm going to go as far as I can. That's powerful.
Got a whooping for it.
Hey, but
that's okay.
I love that ties in, because we want people, whether you're a professional, and I hope professionals aren't discouraged, like, oh, this is this is for the professionals, but it's also for the people who want to support veterans just by getting off their couch, like you said, and going a mile. It made it mission focused. It made it human, I think.
Right. I remember back in the days when I was more competitive and hanging with that group of men and women This is the thing I love about endurance is guys don't think the girls will not hand you your hind parts because they will. And so it really is this community overall, doesn't matter, doesn't male, female, color, none of that matters. You can get in and you can compete with anyone if that's what you're into doing. You can get in and experience this with anyone if that's what you're into doing, but it's what feeds you. And God gave us these bodies for movement, and God gave us this world to move our bodies through. All we're doing is setting up a couple courses for people to come and do that.
Yeah.
That's it.
I said to Jason on episode 1, I had my own revelation with God about what fitness stands for. And that's feeling yourself, knowing yourself, remembering who you are. And what I love, because I've heard so many runner stories, and this is awesome, that at mile 20 in a 30 miler, that finish line they know is right around the corner if they just keep going, right? Mm-hmm. And they have to dig deep to get to the finish line. But it almost like what you're saying is the motivation has to be internal the whole time.
Yes.
There's no finish line up ahead to get you to go that last mile. There's only who you're running for, which you could talk about the ribbons, and why you're running and what's inside of you to go that next step even.
Yes.
It's
yes.
Awesome.
I will tell you a little something about kind of distances. And when you get into distances, within that contained time, there is a cycle that happens in your psyche, where you just go, man, this is great. This is fun. I can't believe it's a beautiful day. And then you get to a point where it's like, it's the kind of particularly long events, and it kind of turns into the dark night of the soul. And hanging through that is where I've always gotten the best lessons. Just hanging through that part where you're like, I can't do it. I can't do it. This is it. I'm stopping. But just knowing if I stop my legs, it's over. So you just really have to focus on move, just keep moving, just keep moving, just keep moving. And then something happens and you click out of that. And it's this feeling of, oh man. And it's kind of a little death and rebirth story,
Mid-run.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. You hit the 20-mile marker, whatever it is, where you're like, I see the end. I'm reborn. I'm going. Mm-hmm. And isn't this a story of just everything that we do?
Yeah.
It's this cycle all the time. I refer to it as going into the cave. Doesn't matter what you do, but what you cannot do, you will go into a cave. We're talking about a proverbial cave here. And the whole point of going into the cave is to fight a dragon, and you die. You die of yourself and come out someone else.
Yeah.
We all have these stories. And the story of WTO is that. So if you want to come and do this run, I think there are 3 reasons to do this for yourself. 1, gauge where you're at. Where am I at? I've thought about, I'm just going to get off the couch and go do a 5K. Can I do it? It doesn't matter if you walk. It doesn't matter if you run. It doesn't matter how fast you are. Just keep moving. Isn't this the story of life? Just keep moving. Let's say you're a person that's kind of where I'm at right now. I got a group of friends that I'm out and I'm active with, and we have a good time. And us old guys, we race for shorter periods. The ride's long, but every once in a while we get a wild hair in the middle of the ride, and we're like, all right, yeah, and we'll go. And then you burn all your matches, and you're like, okay, I hope we can make it home, and so there's that group of people that are just, they want to kind of enjoy this experience together, or maybe they're challenging themselves. And then at the top level, there are elite athletes that really understand. Their lifestyle is challenging themselves.
Right.
And what this does is it brings all these people together, because at some point they're all going to be standing around. And whether you're the guy that did 5 miles or you the guy that did 100 miles, you have a connection point now.
Yep.
And one, the 100-mile can remember. You can be like, okay, I remember being there. And we didn't all just come out and go, wow, look, I can run a marathon.
Right.
And other people will go, wow. I mean, if that 17-year-old girl can do it, I can do it.
It humanizes the elites,
Humanizes
for sure.
All of it.
Yeah,
so we're, after all,
humbles the elite. It helps them remember where they came from.
I think it helps. I'm hoping it will help the elites remember the time when their why had to be strong to keep going.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, and that if you look at even just what WTO stands for and the veterans that we take care of, it's a mirror image of that. We have battalion commanders retiring, been in the military 20 some years, that are super high functioning in their role and leading thousands of soldiers or whatever. And now they're in this new world,
and they're just the next guy on the street now.
Yep. They're the next guy on the street. And then we have E4, E5s coming out after a couple of years of service, or not even. Some people got, other than honorably discharged for some reason after a couple months in, and they're part of our family. And this, like you said, it's all about connection. This is WTO is a family, and there is no hierarchy in that family. Is someone saying, well, I'm a battalion commander. Well, now you're a civilian, and now we all have each other's backs, right?
Right.
We honor our stories, but we have to start somewhere new. So that it's interesting how you're talking, like this is why it came into alignment, because it directly reflects what we stand for.
With all of that said, we live in a world that requires capital. There are things that we need to pay for to do the run, which is my area, all of this stuff. So I guess I would just say, come, give what you can. There are so many things that you can give to in your life, and so many pressures on you. Give here, give there. Why not give to something that invests in you? And one of the things that really inspired me that you guys are doing at W2O is your 2% initiative. And it's such a everything in this organization is a full circle concept, everything. And it's just, I don't know, man, come out to the run, talk to people who are in the organization and doing this, and just find out for yourself what it is. And man, I don't care if you just want to hang out and watch the runners go or see the cyclists. Really, I don't care. But whether it's $5 or $500, this group is going places, and they need your help. So I don't think we can leave this without expressing that.
I'll let you leave that plug. I mean, that's as the race director, that's something you could do. If all you can do is show up, then that's good enough for us.
Absolutely good enough for us.
And we know that whatever, just listen to your hearts. Like our hearts are telling us to create this, and know that the right people are going to show up. And if your heart's telling you, listening to this, that you should be a part of this in any way, shape, or form, you should probably honor that. That's kind of our big thing. So
we will have a tip jar.
for you as
no
donation jar. No, it's just messing with you.
No, yeah. I've already been promised a cold beer at the end, so
there you go.
I'm set.
We do have a beer sponsor.
We do have a beer sponsor. Our friends over at Thirsty Street Brewing will be helping us out, and that's where packet pickup is going to be. So that'll be fun too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Russ, anything else you want to leave people with? I mean, this has been an awesome conversation.
So much, but I think this is enough to get people to come out and enjoy the day, enjoy the event, see what it's all about. And the great thing, this is self-perpetuating. If you come this year and you run 5 miles or you cycle 15 miles, you're going to have that reminder all year long, hanging on your mirror, hanging in your bedroom, wherever. It's going to be there all year long. And our voice is going to be in your head. What are you doing next year?
I can see that on someone's wall, like 13 miles. And then the next year, after 5 years, it's going to be 20 miles, and it's going to be 21 miles, and then 27 miles.
Right.
I can see that being a very powerful motivator in and of itself over time. And that's what we're here for. We do lifelong care of veterans and their families.
That's
we're
right.
here for the long term. So this first year, people are going to know after they're done if they won.
They'll know.
They'll know in their
They will
hearts
know.
that they gave their
Absolutely.
all or not. And that's just, I love that too, that the victory isn't some defined line, that we're always trying to be successful in everything we do. So
Let me tell you, the best victories ultimately come from personal defeats, and getting out there and maybe being a little ticked at yourself that you didn't go quite as far as you'd like to or whatever. That's okay. That's all okay. That's all part of the deal. But we're certainly not there to shame you.
we're giving you're going to get the shirt and the dog tag.
You're going
no
to
matter
get the shirt
what.
and the dog tag and a high five and
Yep.
a beverage at the end of your choice, and a t-shirt to wear around for a year.
Yeah.
So a little reminder that next year you get to step up and do it again. But what do you do with the year? I just love all of those things.
Yeah.
So
That's good. Russ, thanks for joining us.
thank you for having me.
An amazing episode 4 of Revenant, August 12th. See you guys there.